Hey, it's Mike Ambright with FlipNerd.com. Welcome back for another exciting VIP interview where I interview the most successful real estate investing experts and entrepreneurs in our industry to help you learn and grow. Today I'm joined by my new friend Tucker Merrihew. He's a Portland-based real estate investor and entrepreneur, and he's a fellow podcaster. He has an awesome podcast that if you're listening to this, there's a good chance you've seen his too, and if not, you should check it out. He's the host of the Real Deals podcast, where he discusses strategies and a little bit different focus than what I have, a lot of how-to stuff and kind of projects he's working on real time, which is great information. Now, Tucker's business has changed over time to where he's doing a lot more new build construction projects. And today we're going to share just that, how to shift from rehabs to new builds, how to take it up to that next level when it makes sense. And, of course, we're going to learn a lot more about Tucker and all the stuff he does. Before we get started, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Tucker, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad you're here, man. So, it's interesting because I think Have you interviewed other podcasters on your show?
Yeah, I've talked to them.
Yeah.
I've only done a couple interviews on my show.
Yeah.
We all have probably talked to each other at some point.
Yeah.
It's a small community.
It's a small world, no doubt about it. Yeah, I think we saved the best for last. I think you're the last guy that has like an active podcast right now that I haven't talked to. So.
Yeah, well, I guess we're part of that small circle of extremely active podcasts.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, hey, before we get started talking about the topic of the day, why don't you tell us about your background and how you got into real estate investing? You're one of the fortunate few that kind of figured it out right out of college and didn't have to go work for the man for 10 years to learn how much you really want to work for yourself. But tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. I mean, at the time, I don't know that I felt it was fortunate because it was a kind of a tough road to hoe. But I graduated college from the University of Colorado. I went there and played lacrosse, and then at least for a little bit of my tenure there, in between partying and going to class. But so then I came back to Portland here. Originally, I was going to work for kind of a big financial institution in Denver. And they had offered me a job, and then I went through a multiple interview process. On the second interview, which was like a phone interview, They told me they decided that I didn't have the personality that they were looking for. So whatever that means, I don't know. It turned out to be a good thing.
It had nothing to do with looks, though. I mean,
no, of course.
I mean, look, who can't love a face like that?
Yeah. So anyway, I was kind of, like, well, what in the world do I do now? So I moved back to Portland, kind of get my bearings, and I saw an ad in the newspaper for a mortgage brokerage that was going to hire and train you as a loan officer, right? Sounds great, no experience necessary. It was like Boiler Room, the movie,
Right.
I've seen it where that scene where Ben Affleck walks in and throws his keys on the counter and talks about how cool he is and how much money he makes.
Right.
Similar to that, but then they trained us for a couple weeks and they turned us loose in the wild, and that was a hell of an experience. Working there. My office manager now, Chris, he actually started there with me as well, and someday, we said maybe we'd write an HBO series on it because it couldn't be on normal TV, that's for sure. Anyway, I started there, and I learned the financing end of the business, which I think is really important now factoring into today. After about 3 years as a loan officer, I started my own mortgage company. And then, that was rocking and rolling for a while. And then we had a day in 2007. It was like August 17th or something. I don't remember which day exactly, but we literally got a call at the office from every bank that we were hooked up with, and they said, hey, we're freezing all our pipelines. Everything that you've got approved or set for funding, no go. And so, as you know, that was pretty much doomsday in the real estate industry,
right.
And everybody that was driving BMWs and Mercedes started driving Kias and Hondas. There was a lot of people that fell off. And, between that day in August and the end of the year, I kind of tried to figure out what am I going to do now. And during that period of time, I'd been a loan officer. I had, flipped probably a house at a time. I'd bought a house, moved all my buddies in, renovated it, sold it at the peak of the market, made a good chunk of change. So I'd gotten lucky along the way, and I thought I knew what I was doing, but really didn't at that point. But long story short, I ended up deciding to close up the mortgage company and kind of point the ship in a new direction and open up my development company, which is called TTM Development Company. And we started buying REOs in 2008, some short sales, some auction stuff. And then by the end of 2009, beginning of 2010, we kind of wanted to get ahead of the curve as far as acquiring inventory. And so I really put my head down and tried to learn the direct mail game, and really learn how to source properties directly from homeowners, as opposed to having to go through the easier channels, which is the RMLS, realtors, auctions, things like that.
Right.
And I didn't really want my business to be controlled by outside parties or outside inventory providers, and because that's basically what happened to my loan business. The outside world affected my business, and all of a sudden I didn't have a business anymore.
Yeah, you know that's not going to last forever. So tell me about this. When you were in the mortgage industry, I think a lot of people that got hit in the mortgage industry, they were so probably turned off by real estate that they went into totally different industries. And of course, so how did you kind of, how did you know? Not that how did you know, but I mean, what?
I know where you're going with it. I stayed in it because I always wanted to be full-time flipping houses, I guess.
Yeah.
But I was making such good money as a loan officer that I needed that kick in the you-know-what to say, okay, it's time to go full-time into this side of the business.
Right.
And it was hard for me to abandon the loans fully because I was making such good money that it was like, well, why would I leave this? It's paying so well.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when the carpet got pulled out from underneath me, it was like, okay, well, now's the time to go full time into the house flipping side of the business.
Right. Yep. So from that point forward, I guess you've seen a lot of different changes. I mean, the market does it feel to you like here we sit beginning of 2015? Does it feel like from the mortgage industry, from the sales side, does it feel like kind of like 2006 or so to you right now? It feels like we're kind of getting back to some sloppy stuff and.
A little bit. I've talked about this a lot on my podcast. We have a segment where, I basically have a market recap segment where I go over, I watch the market extremely closely because I've been through the ups and downs before, and, I don't want to be in the same position I was last time when the market deflated a little bit.
Right.
And so, I really try and keep my finger on the pulse of that. I think that, the biggest driver to what happened in 2007 was the stated income loans were available essentially for everybody, and also your credit score didn't have to be, you could fog a mirror and get a loan to some extent. That's not the case today. I do think stated loans should be available, but for a certain person, a truly self-employed person, and maybe only up to 75% loan to value. That way they have enough skin in the game that the chances of them ever just saying screw it and giving the property back, very little if they're going to have that much vested. And that also helps support the market because what people pay for property is a function of how well and easy it is to finance. And so, the easier it is to finance and the cheaper it is to finance for anybody to get into the game, it drives prices up. And so I guess the point is that right now it is a little looser than it's been to get loans, but it's not anywhere close to what it was.
Right.
And so, I think the market's hot, but I think it's by virtue of the fact that there's very little inventory. It's an inventory driver right now, and it's not a financing driver.
Yeah. And there's been a lot more, this isn't the purpose of the show today, but there's been a lot more, in a lot of markets, a lot more international buyers that are buying rentals and stuff like that. This is a lot more institutional, I guess, now than it was in the past, too. Yeah. So.
And I think the industry as a whole has grown up a lot in the last, 7-8 years, and, more institutional money is recognizing single-family homes as a legitimate investment, a real asset that they can securitize their money with. And so I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the outside world sees, single-family home investing as a legitimate investment now.
Yep, absolutely. So tell me about this. So I know you've moved into a lot more new builds and found ways to basically just kind of scrape lots, maybe houses you would have tried to rehab in the past and just started from scratch. But is that where you started at? Have you done much wholesaling historically?
Yeah, originally when I first really started doing, just house flipping, I tried to wholesale at first, but it was 2008, and there was hardly anybody that actually wanted to buy it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first real smoking deal I got under contract. I thought I could wholesale it for a good check. I couldn't find anybody to buy it.
Wow.
And at that point, I didn't know as many people as I know now, but there was also very few people actively flipping houses then either. And so I was forced to rehab it, and it was a real simple rehab, and we made a lot of money. And so at that point I said, well, I have to almost convince people to buy these great deals. But might as well just keep them and rehab them. And so what we did is we just went after the same product over and over and over again, which are the simple 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch-style homes that are like 1,000 to 1,200 square feet. Because they're so simple, there's only so much that can be wrong with them. Even if you don't know anything about rehab costs, you can only screw up your budget so much.
Right.
They're just so simple. And so we did tons and tons of those types of houses, and then eventually we decided to kind of swim up market a little bit and kind of tackle the mid-range. And then once we got into there, we started doing some add-on type remodels, because in that mid-range, there's a lot of older houses in Portland that have kind of funky floor plans, and so we decided to basically gut them, reconfigure the floor plans, dormer where we needed to, add on at times, and we did a lot of that. But that was really management intensive. It's there's a lot of people that listen to my podcast and are part of our Deal Finders Academy that's what they're doing now, and I'm kind of helping them through that. But they recognize, and as I found, that it's very management intensive to do complete rebuilds or add-on remodels. It's tough. It's not an easy way. You can make a great living and make great profits, but it's tough.
You're doing it the hard way, yeah. And my experience is similar. I'm in Dallas, so we don't have a lot of really old properties here like you do there. But no doubt there was a time when I didn't want to go above, kind of first-time home buyer price point too far, and I didn't want to deal with burnouts because it was just too much work. And I would say at this point, we just got a house under contract. It's about a $500,000 house, which the median price point in my market is like $140,000, so well above that. And I love burnouts, and it's definitely a lot more work and a lot more risk actually. But I think it's kind of, I think it's typical of somebody to come in and you get comfortable with it, and then you're willing to take on more what I'll call risk. But for guys like you and me, after you've been doing it for a while, it's risk that you can. It's not as risky as what most people would think, because they're calculated risks, right?
Not at all. I mean, people look at what, probably if that's what I'm trying to lead up to what we're doing now, because if you just took a snapshot of what we're doing now, you'd probably think I was certifiably crazy if it's not what you do.
Yeah.
And it's really not. I look at it as, I don't invest in the stock market. All the money I make, I put back in the business and properties, because that's what I know. That's what I'm comfortable with.
Right.
And so I look at it and I say, well, it's no brainer. Outside person looks at it and they say, you're crazy. It's full of risk.
Yeah.
It's just, it depends. It's the eye of the beholder, right? So, now we started doing a lot of those add-on remodels, and then we bought a house, and this was kind of the jump-off point where the foundation had settled on both sides of the houses, so the house almost looked like a rainbow. Like it was messed up, and we thought we'd be able to do some foundation repair and just jack it up and fix the house, because we've done a lot of stuff like that. Well, it turns out they had the house had what they call blue clay in Portland underneath it, and the only way to fix it is you got to excavate out that blue clay, because it basically won't compact.
Oh,
so you don't have a solid surface to pour your foundation off of, which is why the house had started to sag in both sides. So the only way to fix that is to excavate all that out and bring in new fill, compact it, and go from there. Well, you can't do that with a house sitting on it. So we basically were forced into scraping the house in order to remove all that blue clay. And after we did that, we started building new. And we did our first one there, and it was, a very stressful time, I guess, but I'm glad we had that jump off point, because that kind of opened my eyes to how much easier new construction can be than doing those large rebuild and add-on remodels. And now we're almost exclusively new construction.
Yeah, you've got a clean slate. So with that specific house, I mean, you probably bought it not anticipating to scrape it, and probably thought you would, salvage some of what's there. Obviously, I mean, did you make out all right on that one, or was that an expensive lesson for you? Or?
We didn't make as much as we wanted to, but
you didn't lose money. That's a good sign.
No, we made more money than we would have had we just renovated the home. But obviously, it was kind of on the knuckle of the market getting better too.
Yeah.
And we were also forced into. We were the first builder to build new construction in that pocket. So we pretty much set the new high water mark, which that's kind of a dicey spot to be in. You don't want to be that builder that's the guy that's putting his what on the line trying to set that new high water mark. And fortunately, the market kind of coincided with us getting that built, and it carried us through, and we got a buyer. And now builders can't get enough inventory in that area, so we were kind of the first ones. And that was about what did we sell it for? Somewhere $589, I think, was our price that we ended up selling that for. And we just kind of kept going up market, and we tried to find areas that we could build the least amount of home and sell it for the most money, as in the least amount of square footage. So now a lot of what we do is in an area of Lake Oswego, just south of Portland. It's probably the nicest part of the Portland metro area, and we're able to build 2,900 square foot homes and sell them for $1 million or more. And so no basements, pretty, it's pretty conveyor belt style. Now, obviously, we put a lot of work into designing our homes and making them, high end and really amazing. And we've built, a great brand for high end buyers. So, now that's what we focus on. We focus on high end new construction. And, we've sold our last 6 houses this year, been to cash buyers. We haven't even had to put them on the market. So,
that's great.
You look at it from that perspective, very little risk. But if you're not comfortable with the numbers and you're not comfortable with the process and you don't have the experience to get into it, there's a lot of risk, it looks like.
Right. Talk about what most would see a kind of a perceived risk of the mortgage side of it, because it sounds to me like you're probably building homes that are a little bit larger than typical for the area, probably selling them at a premium to most of what's selling in the area because it's old stuff that's not updated and smaller. So how do you get around, or how do you kind of navigate those waters of the issue of it needing to appraise for the value when effectively there's probably not as many comps of like quality properties in the area and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, that was more challenging a few years ago.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, we mainly focus on an area called Lake Oswego, and there's a lot of high-end houses throughout there, but appraisers nowadays, I just had my own home appraised, and it's new construction as well that I built for myself, and they've gotten pretty good at making sure that they are comparing it to other new construction as opposed to, some slightly ratty house down the street that maybe is 8 feet smaller that was built in 1945 as compared to this. So, we haven't run into many appraisal issues these days. We had in the past, but these days there's really a lot, every builder in town is trying to get inventory in the area that we build in, and so there are other comps to use.
Yeah, and these are probably not many FHA loans either, I would suspect. I mean,
we just sold a house yesterday for $1,050,000, and so obviously that's not an FHA buyer, right? That happened to be a cash buyer. But the area we focus on too, it's an A+ area, so we try and provide an A+ product in an A+ area. And no matter what's going on in the market, the people that buy in the A+ area and want an A+ product, they buy what they want.
Right.
Market aside, if you provide that product, they'll buy it no matter what's going on.
Yeah. So when you're in a hot area and you can put a new build out, that a lot of people want to live in a hot area, but they don't necessarily want an old house, which I'm kind of in that. I mean, there's some great, awesome neighborhoods in the Dallas area where I live, but I really have no interest in ever living in a 80 to 100-year-old house. But so that's part of why you do it, is the appeal of something that's new in an old or well-established area. You can maybe add some square footage and make money there. Talk a little bit about how much easier it is to kind of navigate typically issues like permit issues and a lot of things that you're up against when you're trying to rehab an old house.
There's just a lot of retrofitting that has to go on when you're doing large renovations on older homes. I mean, generally, first thing you got to do, at least in Portland, and all over the country, really, those older homes have smaller rooms. They got lath and plaster. They got knob and tube wiring. They've got old, galvanized plumbing. So you go in, and the first thing you got to do is rip out all the lath and plaster, which is a huge mess. It's a huge pain in the butt. I mean, the demo itself is, a ginormous pain in the you-know-what.
Yeah.
And then you got to figure out, okay, how can I make this floor plan more livable for today's standards? Usually those older homes only had 1 bath, maybe 1.5 baths, and now, people want master suites, right? If they're going to be paying higher dollars for their house. So there just is a lot of retrofitting that goes on, and then you have to reconfigure a floor plan within an old footprint, or you need to add on foundation in order to change the footprint. But it's like, at that point, it's easier just to scrape it.
Yeah.
Just build new, because then you're not retrofitting anything. You're starting with a footprint that makes sense for the plan that you have, And one thing that we do is we really spend a lot of time designing our homes. And my wife actually works for me as well, and she used to work for another builder in town, and she managed, all of their design process and their custom home division. So now she works for me, which helps, a lot in making sure our homes are really top-notch parts.
But does your wife mind you saying that she works for you? Because mine says that I work for her. So
the way we have it set up tax-wise, she works for me. So
okay.
That would be the way to describe it, at least. But she's responsible for the looks of our homes and the reason why they are so in demand with the buyers.
Yeah.
It really, I run the business. She creates the finished product.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
and that's the way we have it set up. But it's just we put a lot of effort into the architecture of these new homes too, because one of the big rubs right now is infill development has a lot of negative feelings towards it by a lot of people, whether it's the fact that they don't like to see you making money, or whether they just want to hate capitalism, or whether they just don't want to see any construction in their neighborhood and they like it the way it was. There's all these kind of different forms of crazy out there.
Yeah, I understand. Especially in kind of like some of the historical type areas where people want that charm to live on forever.
And we've done rehabs in historic areas, and we won't touch them with a 10-foot pole anymore, because
I understand.
And paper pushing, you want to put a gun in your mouth most days. So we won't even touch those, but we really do try and make a major effort to make the architecture of our new construction fit in with the older homes of Portland. And so, just quick example, Chris, who's my office manager and our listing agent, we did a home in Northeast Portland that was we actually knocked it down, built new, and he listed it as new construction in the RMLS. Well, one of the realtors that showed it actually called up RMLS and complained about us that we listed it as new construction when we should have listed it as a rehab. It was new construction. So the point is that we made new construction look so good, so almost classic old Portland, that he thought there was no way that was a new build. It had to be a renovation.
Yeah.
So it's, that helps kind of create the nostalgia of old, but the functionality of new.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So talk a little bit about getting these leads. Not so much the leads, but how you can justify paying for a house that you're going to knock down. Because probably most people that you're buying from, especially if you're buying direct, there aren't a lot of people, in my experience of buying houses, that think that call and say, I have a house to sell, but it's only worth a lot value. Like, they all think they're sitting on a pot of gold and it's worth more. So how do you kind of justify paying for a house that you're going to make go away in a few days?
It used to be a lot harder to break that to them and be like, this thing is a shack, it needs to go. But nowadays, with as much infill development or redevelopment that's going on, people kind of make up their mind about that before they call us. Yeah. And especially in the area that we're working in now, most people recognize highest and best use might be just the dirt.
Yeah.
And so we really don't have to fight that battle all that much. We fought that battle more in dealing with people that maybe had homes that didn't need to be scraped, but really needed to have add-on remodels done. And so if you start talking about blowing this wall out here and moving this there, and all of a sudden they think you're growing horns and you're the devil.
Right.
So we've kind of faced that a lot more with people that maybe had homes that didn't need to be scraped as opposed to those that do. So, but we also target people. We're very, very targeted in our direct marketing. To the smaller 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes, or 1-bedroom, 1-bath homes that are in those higher dollar areas, and at that point it's pretty case closed as far as the fact that the dirt is worth more than the house,
right?
And we don't really butt up against much of that.
Yeah. So give some advice to people that are out there that are rehabbers and have done quite a few rehabs. I think part of what this largely depends on whether this makes sense is what the kind of going rate for $1 per square foot is. Of course, you've got to be well above the build price in your market. Like in Dallas, for example, you may know more about where the build price is in your market, but what is it typically? You're probably somewhere in the 90 to 100, 110 range, depending on whether you're
for about 120 square foot, and that's our high end stuff. Now,
higher
of course,
end stuff, yeah.
Yeah, but that I hate saying that because it really depends. There's so much pre-work that goes into a new build that we're talking flat lot, no major geotech issues, no huge foundations, things, no major excavation that's got to happen.
Right.
You know, just talking simple, flat, 5,000 square foot infill lot.
Yeah, yeah. So some markets, like where I'm at in Dallas, I don't know what I mean, there's houses all over the board in terms of dollar per square foot, but there's a lot of older towns that, you know, you're buying houses for below build price, which means you could never build there. It just wouldn't make sense. But
Right.
so if you're in a market where you can kind of arbitrage build price versus the typical sales price per square foot, I mean, that's really, so if you're in one of those markets and you have that opportunity, what kind of advice can you give to people on how they should consider adding on versus just a new build?
Well, one thing I would look at is, you know, what your building permit fees are. You know, in Portland, for example, the reason why most of our redevelopment is occurring in the at least mid-level price point is because a new lot that didn't have a house on it before, if somebody just partitioned off part of their lot and they're going to build, it costs you $44,000 for a building permit.
Oh my God.
So you can see how that's kind of counterintuitive to providing affordable housing in the new, you know, or newer housing in those lower price points. You just can't make it work. You're
Right.
paying more for the permits than you are for the dirt.
Yeah.
So that's why builders are mainly focusing on the mid-level to higher range, you know, redevelopment
Yeah.
when it comes to construction. Now, you know, the other thing to look at is, and we target homes that are pre-existing to knock them down, because if you knock down a pre-existing home and build new, you know, your permit costs are $7 to $8 grand
Okay.
as opposed to $44,000. Now, of course, you have your, you know, your tear down and your removal costs, but it's minimal in comparison to that difference.
Right.
So, you know, we focus on, you know, finding those homes that are tear down, and then we focus on those areas where, you know, we're selling for somewhere between $325 and $375 a square foot, probably is what the retail sales price is.
Okay.
The areas that we focus on, and then we're building for about 120 a square foot, so you can see how we build in our market.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you can justify paying for a house that you're just going to knock down and rebuild on.
Exactly, and a lot of the lots that we pay for, I mean, it sounds crazy, I'm sure, to some people, but we pay 3, 4, 5, 600,000 per lots.
Wow.
So, you know, it's it sounds crazy, right? But
Yeah.
you know, it's just math, and so you look at the numbers and you make sure that high-end market has a, you know, a steady stream of demand.
Yeah.
And you know, if you are going to build, you know, for example, we paid just under 500 grand for a lot that we're doing some geotech work on, and it had an existing house on it, so we're scraping the house off, but it literally is almost an acre, and it's virtually a flat lot, and it has a panoramic view of Lake Oswego, which is, you know, a man-made, well, it's not man-made lake, but it's a huge lake in that city south of Portland, and it's, I mean, you can't find a lot like that. You've got this panoramic view of the lake, and it's set up above it. I mean, it's crazy, but, you know, when we're done with it, it'll probably be worth 1.8 to 2.2.
Wow, that's awesome.
So depending on how it turns out.
Yeah.
But, so, you know, you just have to kind of do the math and then make sure that if you are going higher end, that product that you're, you know, going to put out to market is something that, you know, it's kind of like the unicorn, right? It doesn't really exist. So put it out. I want it, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, Tucker, tell us a little bit about, we have just a couple more minutes. Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, so, you know, I started it, we're kind of in that almost same class of people starting podcasts, you know, a year ago or so now. We just had our 1-year anniversary episode a couple weeks ago. We just put out episode 50, so you got us, you know, you've surpassed us immensely by number of episodes. But, you know, we try and put out an episode a week, and you can find it at therealdealspodcast.com, and that's deals with a Z. Or you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, you know, all the normal places.
Yeah.
If you go to our website, you know, we've got all the past episodes. You can learn a little bit more about me and find out, you know, all of our other contact info.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a great show, and I recommend people check it out. We'll add links for everything down below here. So we've got just about a minute or so left. Any kind of words of wisdom you want to share with us on how folks should consider, you know, basically about the importance of being willing and able to kind of evolve in your business as you have, the importance of that?
I think that you should always be looking to evolve. I think that, you know, starting, a lot of people push that you should start wholesaling, and I agree. I think that it gets you in front of a lot of houses. You learn your market, you learn the players. You really start to get some experience, but you should always be looking to evolve your real estate business and grow it. So, you know, you start with wholesaling, then you start with light rehabs, you get into bigger rehabs, maybe some add-on rehabs, and then, you know, you can evolve to new construction.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you'll probably agree, but most people that that I've had on the show, a lot of veteran real estate investors, people that have been around for a long time. At the end of the day, I think most people would agree with this comment that we're in the opportunity business. Ultimately, real estate is kind of the vehicle we've chosen, but it's got to change over time, and you have to kind of keep your ear to the ground of what opportunities you're presented with at that moment, right?
Exactly, and you're always evolving, and as you evolve, things that might not have appeared as an opportunity a couple years ago now look like a great one. So it just depends on your vantage point and where you are in the business, but you should always be looking to evolve and continue to grow.
Yep. Awesome. Well, hey, Tucker, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me. My pleasure.
All right, we'll see you soon. Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.